Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Touhou Quest, where I play my way through all the mainline Touhou games and give my thoughts on each of them with a hard mode 1cc. Today's entry in this series is a very special one because it is Touhou 8 Imperishable Night. And this game is special to me for two reasons. One, because I like it a lot and it might be my favorite Touhou game, at least so far in the series. And the second reason why is that many years ago, so 2 or 3 years ago, but in YouTuber time, that's like a decade, I did a Patreon topic video, and it is one of the very first Patreon topic videos, I believe, where I answered the question, what is the best shmup for beginners? And at that time, I think most of my audience were shmup players, arcade players only. And my audience wasn't all that big, and I think most of the guys around were arcade players. And so when I selected Touhou Imperishable Night, I remember a lot of people being like, whoa, what? Touhou? Why are you selecting Touhou? But in that video, I explained why I think Touhou is an excellent series and probably the best series to get into the genre with. And ever since I did that video, I've always been pleasantly surprised at how much that analysis has held up over the years in terms of, you know, at the time, this is 2 or 3 years ago, I still think that I am correct in that Touhou 8 Imperishable Night is the best shmup for new players, period. So if you're new to the genre of shmups, you want to get better in the genre, you don't know what to do, you don't know where to go, where do you turn? Where you turn is to a website, Moya Shrine, I think it's pronounced, and you go on there and you download a little game called Touhou 8 Imperishable Night. That's where you turn. And in this video, I'm not only going to be talking about my experience going for the hard mode 1cc, but I'm also going to be pointing out specifically why I think Touhou 8 is the perfect starting point within the genre. And in fact, as I was working on this hard mode 1cc, I felt myself improving and started sharpening up my dull skills. And yeah, I could feel myself getting better as I played, and I'm going to explain why that is. So to begin with, Touhou as a series, there are some flaws with the series that I will point out as we go through Touhou Quest. But I think at this point, it's safe to say that one of the major flaws of the Touhou series is the way Stage 1 kind of just sucks. So pretty much every Touhou game I've played so far, and a lot of the Touhou games I've played so far are among some of the best in the series, all of them have this very underwhelming Stage 1, and in fact, in this replay, I don't even show Stage 1. I show the replay file of me playing Stage 1 on the select screen, but we just jump right into Stage 2. But some of the other Touhou games that I can't quite remember which ones, but some of the other Touhou games also have kind of an underwhelming Stage 2. But what's great about Imperishable Night is that Stage 2 is a nice starting point. So if you're getting into this genre, Stage 1 is like basics, ABC, can you count, can you, do the alphabet? But then Stage 2 actually gets things rolling and presents you with some interesting patterns. This pattern specifically, I definitely wanted to point out this darkening, feel pattern where it gives you kind of a spotlight and darkens the rest of the screen. This pattern does an excellent job of creating a visual representation of the player's field of vision when you are dodging dense bullet patterns. And you'll see here, so this is a dense bullet pattern, and this field of vision, Touhou is kind of teaching you, okay, this is sort of the field of vision you look in when you're doing really precise micro dodging. And what's also fun about it is that it plays with you using your other senses. So on top of the little red bullets that you have to dodge, it also has these large blue bullets that come down. And the thing about the large blue bullets is that you can defeat them with your shot, unfocused. So what you're doing a lot is you're doing your focus shot and then doing your unfocused shot, and you have to rely mostly on your ear to know, okay, did the unfocused shot kill the blue bullet, and then can I continue focusing? And I think this is an aspect of shmups that people don't acknowledge or think about enough. Maybe I need to make a how-to tutorial video about this topic specifically. But in shmups, you can actually use your ears way more than you think, especially when it comes to complex patterns that you're dodging and dealing with enemies higher up on screen. A great example of this, take a shot now, because I'm going to say it, in Donanpachi. It's just the theme of the channel. Sorry, but everyone, you're just going to have to deal with it. In Donanpachi, with the chaining system, a lot of the time, because the chaining is so precise, what you have to do is you have to shoot that laser, and then you have to just listen for when the laser kills the enemy and then move it, because you're looking elsewhere for visual cues. So a lot of the time, especially in Donanpachi and DOJ, and Ketsui as well, when you have things way up on screen, you can't use your eyes all the time. Sometimes you got to use your ear because your eye's busy doing other things. And I think that pattern with the darkened screen, not only is that showing you what the field of vision should look like in terms of when you're doing those really precise micro dodges, but it's also teaching you, okay, now you have to learn to rely on your ears, because you literally can't see, because I'm going to black out the screen. And this is a running theme through Touhou 8 that I'm going to point out as we go through, is why I think it is so good for beginners, because it's striking this really interesting middle ground where a lot of the patterns, a lot of stages, and a lot of the enemies still have that nice sort of fundamental bullet design dodging like we're seeing right here. So this pattern here, this is like a Mushi style pattern, a cave style pattern. This is a great cluster dodge pattern that you can learn and practice. And I highly recommend if you are wanting to get better in the genre, especially bullet hell, but even outside of bullet hell, I think just generally, what you should do is you should fire up Touhou Imperishable Night, play through the arcade mode, whatever difficulty mode you're going to play at, probably normal for newer players. I think easy might be a little too easy, but so I'd say try normal. And if that's really grinding your gears, maybe drop down to easy, but try normal. And just play through the arcade mode, or whatever you call it, the campaign story, whatever the Touhou version of that, since it's not an arcade game. Play through that. Feel totally free to credit feed your way through it, by the way. And you may be saying, oh, credit feed? What kind of scrubby advice is that? Well, the reason why you want to do that is because you want to unlock the spell card practice. And if you face a pattern in the arcade mode, even if you credit feed to it, you can unlock that pattern in the spell card practice. And then just go in there and just grind these spell cards for hours and hours. I did that for this 1cc. I sat there for hours grinding these spell cards, and it was actually a lot of fun. And I don't think up until this point I really come to appreciate how good the Touhou spell card practice mode is. There is something special about it that I think arcade games can learn from. I mean, there's some really basic things that seem trivial but are actually kind of important. One is that when you're practicing a spell card and you're grinding it over and over and over, Zun is really good about getting you right back into it super fast. And a lot of practice modes in arcade shmups don't do that. A lot of practice modes in arcade shmup, like, you have to sit there for 5 seconds before the pattern begins, then you reset it, then you got to sit there another 5 seconds before the pattern begins. Zun really keeps it close and keeps it tight, so you're just into the pattern. Also, it auto resets if you bomb or if you get hit. I really like that, because what can often happen is when you're doing practice in arcade mode, in arcade shmups, and you're in practice mode, we all fudge it. Let's not lie to ourselves. We all fudge it where, you know, you're about through the pattern and then you bomb it and you're like, good enough, right? But I like how the spell card practice mode in Touhou is like, no. You actually have to no bomb it. Otherwise, it'll just reset. I really like that Touhou forces that. I think this is something that arcade shmup should just immediately add to your game. If you're sitting around and you have an arcade indie shmup, patch this into your game right away. Patch in a spell card type practice mode into it where you can't bomb, you have to dodge all the patterns, and then it's really tightly going from pattern to pattern in the practice mode. Because yes, it's cool to link the patterns and everything and practice the bosses that way. That should be in there. But I think individually focusing on patterns in practice mode is really, really helpful and really useful. And can give you that precision that's kind of hard to make yourself do otherwise. And then another fun little trick that the Touhou practice mode, spell card practice mode specifically does, is that it does not restart the music. That seems trivial, but it's actually really clever, because let's say you're save state grinding in Ketsui. Let's say you're save state grinding in Donanpachi. Now, save states are amazing, they're a miracle, they're wonderful, but what they can't do is they can't keep the soundtrack going. So usually when I say, that's why when I play Dononpachi and I play Ketsui and I practice them, I don't even listen to the sound anymore. Because hearing the same load, 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 you get the point, over and over and over will drive you clinically insane. So I usually just play shmups on mute and then have some kind of backing music that I listen to. Whatever, RPG music often, funny enough. But yeah, some kind of backing music. But what's cool about Touhou is it's built into the game. So when you're grinding these spell cards, it does not restart the soundtrack. And so it seems like a little feature, but that feature really goes a long way to make the spell card practice feel like more legit of a mode versus like save state practice. So that would be, now in arcade shmups, getting that in there at these points, you're just gonna have to deal with the audio stuff. But if you're making like an indie shmup, like a Blue Revolver or something like that, add that into your practice mode. I think that's really cool, where the soundtrack keeps playing. You can actually hear the whole song rather than the same 12 notes over and over. I don't know what I did there, by the way, on that pattern. But let's get back to talking about Touhou 8. So the spell card practice is amazing. This boss here is really, really good because some of these patterns that the boss has, the star boss, I think that's Marissa, isn't it? A lot of these patterns are really nice and fundamental, and they're just teaching you how to track bullets coming from multiple angles and multiple directions. And there's one particular spell card that I hope I didn't miss it in my rambling. Let's keep an eye out. I don't think I did. That is really fantastic because it has it all. It has bullets coming from the side, it has bullets coming from the other side, and then it has these big bullets coming down from the top. And you just have to literally watch all three at once. This pattern here is another really fun fundamental pattern. It reminds me of the boss 1 pattern in DOJ, the last pattern, but a little bit more challenging. This pattern's great. Again, it's just helping teach you. That's also reminds me of like a Mushi pattern. It's just helping teach you, okay, how do you juggle, how do you watch these different patterns? And the thing about Touhou 8 is, like I'm saying, some of the earlier Touhou games, like I'm going off memory here, I would say 6 or 7. One of them is definitely a lot more cave-like with the patterns, and so you'd think, oh, that would be the better one because they're all more cave-like. But Touhou 8 does start to introduce what I like to call trick patterns or puzzle-ish patterns. I don't like to use the word puzzle anymore because, you know, people run away with that. Oh, it's a puzzle game. No, okay. Puzzle-ish patterns, trick-style pattern, where they have kind of an underlying logic behind them that you can kind of study and reverse engineer rather than doing fundamental just spacing and movement. But the thing about the trick pattern, and I'm not a huge fan of these style of patterns, especially in later Touhou games and Touhou fan games and stuff, but I think in Touhou 8, the way he does these patterns is really, really good because they actually teach you like a little, they're like almost like a little mini tutorial inside the game to teach you some fundamental concept, like streaming and tracking bullets without seeing them, micro dodging, tap dodging. Here's this pattern right here. This is the tap dodge pattern. Like, how do you solve this pattern? You just slowly, oh so precisely tap dodge like this. So there's one pattern like that, the tap dodge pattern. But when we get into stage 5, which I think we're coming into here, yeah, I'm really sad I didn't mention that pattern before, but go back in stage 3, there's this pattern where you got stars from the left, stars from the right, and big stars coming from the top. That pattern is really, really good at teaching you how to dodge complex multi-directional patterns like you get in Ketsui, for example. Just go grind that pattern hour after hour. You will literally feel yourself getting better at the genre doing it. That pattern is fantastic. Now, we start getting into stage 5, which has the trick patterns. And when you first play stage 5, you're going to be real annoyed because these trick patterns they're sneaky. And so if you're not used to playing Touhou trick patterns, you're going to get absolutely owned by them. But they are all teaching you, I think, a really nice, useful lesson. So I'm going to try to provide a little bit more hands-on commentary when these patterns come up so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But overall, even though Touhou is not super well known for its stage sections like you see here, and to be honest, they aren't all that great. I don't think Touhou ever really excels at that, because my view on Touhou is that what Touhou is, in its origin, in its design philosophy, is you take hibachi and you just fight hibachi for 30 minutes. That's kind of in various forms and fashions, but with a lot of really cool, interesting ideas. So essentially, Touhou is not that far off of a boss rush. And the thing about boss rushes is some people can view that as like an incomplete experience. I don't view it that way. I view it as an alternative shmup experience where, yes, you're not getting the same dynamics that you get with really good stage design and stuff like that. But think about games like Psycho, or think about Toplan and these types of games. A lot of them have pretty underdeveloped boss fights. Psycho bosses are hard, but they're kind of, a little bit straightforward and whatnot. What I think Touhou does that makes the series so significant is that I think it does really push the boss meta of shmups, and that without Touhou, we wouldn't have as good boss shmup meta as we do, because Touhou just kept pushing it and coming up with more and more interesting ideas. And it turns out that bosses are a great way to practice and learn the genre, because you're focusing more on the patterns and less on routing. And also, when you're fighting bosses and you're like fighting these long, dense patterns, in cave games like Dononpachi, DOJ, Ketsui, a lot of these games, you don't know you make the mistake until you die. It's hard to explain, but basically, let's take the Hall of Hell in Dononpachi. You probably made the mistake 3 seconds or 4 seconds before you actually died. Before the bullet even hit you, you've basically sealed your fate. You've walled yourself into a death situation. Whereas with Touhou doesn't really do that. It's always given you kind of a shake at trying to... Okay, so there was a trick pattern there where it has these two overlapping. And what the pattern is teaching you is that if you can get bullets to overlap in a consistent way, it's actually easier to dodge them rather than harder to dodge them. So you line them up in the center and you just dodge downward, it's streaming backwards. That's how you do that pattern. This pattern here is a trick pattern, but it teaches you basically how to read patterns that overlap. Once again, that's a real theme of this boss, is reading overlapping pattern. But it's really clever the way it does it, because it has one on the foreground and one on the background. And your eyes tend to focus on the one on the foreground, but the one in the background is often the one that catches you. So that pattern there, again, it's just teaching you to read patterns very, very quickly and finding gaps in an interesting way. I think it's a cool pattern. At first, it's going to drive you crazy. This is a really good one because this teaches you all about bullet streaming, where you move with the bullets in different sections. This is a really good pattern to practice. Just practice it over and over and over, because it's all about bullet streaming. It's all about moving with the flow of the bullets. So you see I'm tapping to the right, and then you have to break out and kind of weave your way through. This is a really, really fun pattern. I'm not sure how static it is. I'm not sure how static a lot of these patterns are. I practiced them all, but I didn't master them to the point where I knew if they were static or not. I get the feeling there's some variation between them, but I'm not totally sure if that's true. This pattern here, again, it's a trick pattern, but it's a trick pattern that's teaching you a really good lesson. And that lesson is learning to dodge bullets before they happen on screen, appear on screen. This is a concept I bring up a lot in the tutorial stuff, where I talk about how when you want to get really good at the genre and you want to do those Jamer's dodging rain style bullet dodges that everyone talks about, a lot of people think it comes down to reaction time. A lot of people think it comes down to seeing the bullet and having this microcomputer go off in your brain that's like, and you're just dodging it like a TAS. Well, not so much, like Shalanchi, basically. Well, not so much. Instead, the way these dodges are accomplished is that you are dodging before the bullet even appears on screen. Essentially, you know where the bullet is before it is there, before it's even shot. You know the bullet will appear here, and you can mentally trace that picture in your head. And the better you are at mentally tracing these pictures accurately, the better of a shmup player you are. I think that's one of the fundamental skills that separates the god tier shmup players from us mortals, is they can very accurately picture and mentally map out where bullets will appear very far ahead of time, like a chess player. They can see it before it happens. Well, that pattern, I'm still talking about that pattern. This stage stuff's stupid anyway. So that pattern where the bullets disappear and you literally have to visualize where they will reappear, that pattern is teaching you that lesson in, I think, a really neat way. And so again, that's a pattern that I think is worth practicing and learning, because it's teaching you, okay, you have to learn to visualize bullets even when they're not on screen by literally making the bullets disappear. This pattern here is a little bit underwhelming, because once you figure out that, once again, you can just tap dodge it, yeah, just take it easy and tap dodge it. This is the cat's eye pattern. I call every pattern like this the cat's eye. It is very famous across a lot of shmups. It's in Danmaku Unlimited 3, and you can grind it for a lot of graze points. I think any game with grazing, it's like required to have a cat's eye. Interestingly, it's also in Crimson Clover. There's a cat's eye pattern in that. The cat's eye is when you have bullets circle around you and then they shoot like within the circle. That's called a cat's eye. I made that term up, but I like it, so I continue to use it. So here we go again. Now we're getting to the later shots, the later enemies and patterns here. And this is just a really fundamental pattern that I ended up screwing up. But this boss here has a lot of really fundamental patterns, which makes it a really good final boss, in my opinion, where it's not about learning. These aren't trick patterns anymore. Now it's just like, can you read stuff? And can you read stuff really fast? Because that's what we're doing, baby. And that's what I really like about Touhou 8 Imperishable Night, that I think sets it apart from some of the other Touhou games I played, where the pattern progression is really, really good in this game, where it teaches, like, the patterns in stage 2 teach you a lesson, and then later on the patterns appear. I remember in one of the other Touhous, it's either 6 or 7, I'm sorry, I can't remember which, it kind of did that, but it literally just repeated the same patterns over and over. That didn't quite work. You don't want to repeat the patterns over and over. You want to have meaningful variations on them. Like here, remember we had the cluster pattern all the way back in stage 2? Well, here comes, it returns, but now it's more dense and more erratic. But the same idea appears. Again, here's another one, the tap dot. Remember the micro dodging pattern from earlier? It now reappears, but it's a lot more dense, and the lasers are a lot more active, and you're supposed to go ahead and get into the gap areas a little bit more efficiently. So I got the clear. So for me, that's like, okay, we did it. But I didn't play super well in this boss, because I spent almost all my practice time on 4 and 5, because I figured, okay, I'll do 4 and 5 super well, and then I'll just abuse resources in 6. And that I did practice 6 some, but that barely panned out. Because I end up dodging the final pattern way longer without any resources than I was expecting. This pattern here is really fun because it's all about, again, streaming and then doing a quick cross. I got a little too antsy in my pantsy, and I quick crossed right into him. I was too fast there. That one, I made the dodge, and I got ants in my pants, so I just bombed for absolutely no reason. And one other mechanic I really want to talk about with this game is the reflex bomb mechanic. I think this is a fantastic tool. I think it is another reason why this game is so good for beginners. Because basically the way it works is when you're dying, you have this window of opportunity where if you bomb, you can save yourself, but it uses more bomb stock. This reflex bombing mechanic is incredibly good, and I'm really happy that Touhou has it, and I think this is something that arcade shmup should look into, I think, at least as like a mode. Like, I think SDOJ has an auto bomb selection mode. I feel like a lot of arcade shmup should have it as like when you go to select, like, do you want reflex bomb or not? And then maybe you can have a score punish for that, or have it be a special arrange or an option. I don't know. The reason why, or put it in your novice mode maybe. The reason why the reflex bomb is so good though, is because it teaches new players to bomb before dying. Like, it teaches you reflex bombing. In cave games, that's a fundamental skill, because if you can't reflex bomb, you're basically working with half the resources because the reflex bombs are the safety net for your dodging. But in cave games and in most arcade shmups, you have to actually bomb before you get hit, obviously. Touhou gives you that little window where you can actually still have it work. The thing about it is, yes, you can kind of build a bad habit of bombing after you get hit, but it's still teaching you to get your finger and get your thumb or whatever button you press to bomb, to get it, to like have it at the ready. And it teaches you that like indirectly, rather than having it be some kind of challenge or rather having it being a special mode. Touhou is teaching you that skill of, okay, I'm going into a dense pattern, I'm gonna stick my hand on the hair trigger of the bomb and be prepared at the slightest twitch to hit that bomb. Touhou teaches you to do that. And so here we go. That was the final pattern there. Then I was like hopping off, and then this pattern appeared, and I was like, what the WTF? I've never seen this before. But basically, these are, I think, bonus patterns, because it says that I got the clear and I don't die from them. So I believe these are bonus patterns. I've also never seen these patterns before either. So I think because I got the 1cc, you get these special bonus patterns, like a TLB basically. And I had no idea they existed, so I had no idea how to dodge them. So I was just like, it's over. I'll just let it kill me, basically. But it still counts it as a clear. I know it counts it as a clear for two reasons. The first reason is that it says so. All clear right up there. Secondly, I actually unlocked the extra stage after doing it. It says, oh, congrats. Here's the extra stage. So in summary, let's talk about Imperishable Night before we close out a little bit more. So Imperishable Night, I think it is the best shmup for beginners. It is the best shmup to get you into the genre because, one, it has amazing patterns that are like built-in tutorials for a lot of patterns that you see in bullet hell and shmup generally. And it has this great spell card practice mode that teaches you to practice them and is very efficient and fun and non-grindy. Like, I sat there and practiced spell cards for hours. I was just having a great time. I was like, I didn't realize how fun spell card practice in Touhou is. So the spell card practice is amazing. The patterns themselves are really good. And then it has that really, really nice balance between, it's got the fundamental, cavey style patterns that you need to dodge, but then it brings in that little bit of Touhou flavor that you only get in Touhou, where it starts doing these funny trick patterns. Those can go haywire, like a fantastic shooting festival. Some of those trick patterns are absolutely stupid, but I think the trick patterns in this game are really good because all of them are teaching you some fundamental skills. They're like little built-in tutorials. So I've had a lot of fun with this one. This is by far, so far, my favorite Touhou game that I've played. I kind of cheating a little bit because I knew I liked Touhou 8 and I've messed around with Touhou 8. But still, I was pleasantly... Until you grind a game, you never know a game until you grind on it, right? Maybe that's some relationship advice. You never know it until you grind on it. You never know a game until you grind it. And so I had a great time practicing and playing this game. And I actually had me excited to play Touhou 9. I want to get to 10. We got to go through 9 to get to 10 because my other favorite one that I remember playing is Mountain of Faith. But overall, Touhou 8 Imperishable Night. Oh, in the replay, you see me playing it vertically. I highly recommend you play all these old school Touhou shmups vertically. And you can do that by downloading something called Throtator. And you put that in the exe file, and then boom, baby, you got rotation, and it goes a long, long way because I think Touhou's original aspect ratio is stupid and wastes a lot of screen real estate for absolutely no reason. And so having Throtator is a godsend. Whoever created Throtator should be knighted if he is British, and if not, should win the Nobel Prize in Freedom because Throtator is a godsend to all shmup players in the world. I hope you all enjoyed it. Keep an eye out because I got 2 really cool Touhou videos coming up for the Touhou fans. So thanks so much. Please like, subscribe, tell all your friends, tell all the Touhou fans about Touhou Quest. Adios, everyone. So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, accepting Panda, Admiral Coconut, Anhold, Alexander Pfeiffer, Dingo, Anthony A, Arcade Hell, Arrow Viper, Beam Pit, Bo, Ben, Beetle Dames, Bog Hog, Brian Shiver, Chase Palumbo, Chattel Maltese, Chris Yusufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Clara Cliff, Climby Coyote, Toast, Color Boy, Cooksan 666, Cook Some Soup, Corey Mark, Des Audio, Dan Chi, Darren Griffin, Dave Hansen, David Crespo, Delta Tango 6, Disco Star Slayer, DJ420 Praise It, Fantaside, FCK, Frames Per Human, Francisco, Full Set, Retro Shmupper, Hausu, Jake Ryan, JLab, JBRPG, John Kelly, Game Boy Guru, K, K2, Khalil Reedy, Contain, Craze the Boys, K-Horse, Low Casting, Malaise, Matt O'Leary, Maz, Megadeth 859, Minang, Mechalin, Michael McCord, Michelle Y, Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Googles, Philip Mason, Rattlecat, Raul, Real Scheme, Riff Mason, Rolf015, Scanline City, Seesaw FW, Shmup Junkie, Zero Pong, Steve Fiction, Storian Soil, Street Magic, Superfunk, SW1335, Amzarian, Kagero Mucho, The Boot Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, TRM, Sugumo, 2IU, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Vic Viper, Wabby Legs, X20 Spec, Utakaya, Zachary Patton.